Hello, how are you? We are today with Karl Redgen. He's an accomplished director and producer from Melbourne, Australia, and now based in the United States. Um, right now, it's sorry, like technical things. He's producing the short film "Other Riches," which I already had the pleasure to see. It was an amazing experience. I want to know a lot of things about our riches, but I also want to know a lot about your journey,
Mhm.
Carl. So tell us about yourself. How your journey with the filmmaking starts, and how you get to the United States to produce this kind of work.
Yeah, well, sure thing. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. It's good being here. Yeah, so I'm originally from Australia. I
Yeah.
have been working sort of on film stuff for most of my life. When I was in high school, I knew it's what I wanted to do. I watched every movie I could and really wanted to have that opportunity to kind of make movies. So as soon as I finished high school, went to film school, jumped on every project I could. And I originally started as an assistant director. So on a lot of films, I did all the scheduling and managed the sets. It was just easier because in Australia, there wasn't a lot of people that wanted to do that role. And I had the opportunity to kind of step up and work on some big films. And then after a while, I really felt like working on my own stuff. And as what happens a lot of times when you try and work in an industry like this, where you run out of money, I got a job in other fields, in hospitality and in hotels and stuff. And so I was working a job that paid very well. And one day I was sitting at my desk and was like, I don't really want to be working 9 to 5 in
Mhm.
this corporate world. And so I rang my producer friend and said, "Hey, we try to make a film a few years ago. It didn't really work. I reckon we should do it again." And so we started planning it. I wrote a script. So we had the meeting, and I said, "Okay, I've got this idea for this alien movie about a ship that crash lands. It's really unique with mix of CGI, with mix of practicals." And I went away and wrote that script and called him very excitedly. I'm like, Ruben, I finished the script. And so we started breaking it down and working out a budget. And I said, well, what's the best way we can make this? And so, got a bunch of crew. He brought a bunch of people on board and started doing the proper process that I used to do when I was making films in film school and a little bit after, because I gave it up for a bit. I gave it up for about 5 years just because, you have to work a normal job, you got to pay bills and all that.
Mhm.
And so then I put a resignation in at my job, and he was like, "But you're so good. You're like the best person I've ever had for this role." And I was like, "Well, I'm going to go to Melbourne and back to the big city and be a filmmaker." And so got the team together, made Outer Reaches, came to America for 6 months. I was on a tourist visa doing the festival circuit. And then when that visa expired, I went back to Australia and said, "All right," called Ruben up again and said, "Let's do that all over again," and made another film, which is Closed Circuit, which is currently playing at the festivals at the moment.
So you came on a visa. You put your film through the festivals, and you
Mhm.
had to get back and get back into start working on the next film, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Eh, Where did you produce all the riches? Where was produced?
So we made Outer Reaches in Melbourne.
Okay.
So I was basically all the crew and the cast are Melbourne based. And so my producer, what he did was he really brought all the team. So he got the DOP in touch with me, the sound guy, the makeup artist, and so we kind of started producing it together. And we went out. So the location that's in Outer Reaches is kind of like the middle of nowhere.
Mhm.
And it was interesting because it's where they shot the TV show Preacher. So I don't know if you've ever seen Preacher before, but there's a scene
Yes.
where like the church burns down.
Mhm.
And so that was filmed at this location. And so we had some contacts because a couple of people on our team had worked on Preacher. So the guy who plays the alien, he plays God in Preacher. And
Mhm.
also our special effects supervisor worked on that show. He did that. So he got us in touch with them. But we went out there and it was a very weird experience because there was no running water, there was no
Okay.
electricity, there was no toilets, and
Mhm.
it just was some random plot of land. And we kind of got a bit taken advantage of. So because big projected film there, they were like, "Oh, we want all this money." And it was like, "Well, we don't have any money." And so we had to make a decision where we spend the money and shoot the location we want, or we go somewhere else. And I made the decision after a while and said, whatever, I'm just going to shoot here and just, get ripped off. And, they don't have a thanks in the credit. They don't get acknowledged, and I'll never work with them again. But we got a good film out of it.
That's one question that I want to ask you. What was your budget for the film? It's a short film, but it's really, really well crafted.
Sure.
Well produced.
Yeah. So the budget was $35,000 US. That money came out of my bank account. So we have no investors, no private, there's no other production companies involved. And that money came specifically from working this really good job. I had all this savings ready to go. I worked for 6 months and I literally didn't spend a single dollar. I was saving everything and had about, and this is an Australian dollar, so I had about 50,000 in my account. And that's when I rang my producer and we said, all right, let's go. Now, when you produce a film on this scale, you originally think that it's going to be like, 20, maybe 25. And then that price keeps going up and you keep getting, things like the location, and the ships are built by hand. The prosthetic of the alien is all hand built prosthetics. So those things kind of cost money. But we had a pretty close team, and so in the end, it was $35,000 US that cost me to get the film made.
It's well, for the costs of the United States and the film in general, 35,000 is pretty cheap.
Yeah.
If you put it in those terms. I was thinking a lot about comparing you with the work of the director of the film with Gareth Edwards, the director from Gareth Edwards, the director
Gareth Edwards.
Yes, sorry for my pronunciation. Director from Godzilla, and most recently, the creator and Rogue One Star Wars. But the thing is, he was launched like a small short, and that was like a really good way to showcase his capabilities, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Gareth Edwards is an interesting one for me because he has a lot of inspiration. So just before I made this film, I went and saw the movie The Creator. So I saw The Creator and I was blown away by the production. Very 80 million, but for that kind of ILM knocked it out of the park and doing stuff that never been done. And I kind of felt that inspiration from that. So Monsters, which is the movie I think you're referring to, he did all the visual effects himself. He was in the film, he edited the film. And so for me, when we were looking at alien movies and we were looking at that kind of low budget, do it yourself, just grab a camera, go to a location, Monsters was a big inspiration for that. And even giving Monsters to my DP to say, watch this film. And my visual effects team. So interestingly enough, so my visual effects team that did all of the sky replacement, they did all the digital LUTs and stuff and HUDs. They're based in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And so when I visited them at their studio, I went to Thailand, went to Chiang Mai, and we were talking about The Creator and talking about the fact that some of his crew for my film worked on The Creator and was part of the Thai crew. So it really was a full circle moment where making this movie, having inspired by Gareth Edwards, and then going to Thailand and working with some of the rotoscopers and visual effects artists who worked on The Creator.
Yeah, I perceive that because kind of certain things are similar overall. Like how you're starting is pretty solid, and I love it. And how many people work in your production?
So, including the visual effects team that I had and the builders that did the painting and the building, probably around 20. On set, we had around about 14, including actors. But obviously, there's only 2 actors in the whole film, so not too complicated. But for example, the ship, so the interior of the ship, we had a construction lead, we had painters, we had people that designed the there's a hydraulics where the not hydraulics, but where the water squirts out. Like we built that rig. So that team itself that built the set was 4 people, led by my production designer Sasha. And then on the tentacle side, which is an interesting thing to say, so I had a whole build team for that too. So Sharp Effects, who designed the tentacle monster, they built all the prosthetics, they built all the creature makeup. He had a team of probably 4 people, and so have you seen the film Late Night with the Devil?
Yes, of course.
So when they were shooting that, they were also working on my project too. So when I went in to their studio, I saw that girl build. So they were working on both projects at the same time. And originally it was meant to be a lot smaller, and because I had a limited budget. And so we were only going to have a couple of tentacles, maybe the one around their neck, the guy's neck. And then they started designing more and more tentacles, and got to set, and they were like, we got like 9 tentacles. And so there was on set, there was a whole team of people making the tentacles move and making it pulsate. And so there was a lot of creative techniques similar to like the Substance, where they were like making these prosthetics kind of like slither and move. It was more complicated than I initially anticipated, but what was awesome about that is you've got like 2 puppeteers, you've got the lead special effects artist, you've got obviously the actor who's sitting there, and then the rest of the crew. So you just where the actor is, because he can't move because he's kind of trapped to the chair. We had like 6 people all operating this sort of like tentacle monster creature, which I think is pretty cool.
How many hours do you spend for all the makeup?
So he was in makeup for probably 5 hours, probably 4 hours specifically sitting in makeup. So he arrived on set at like 6 in the morning that day. So he was only on set for 1 day. So that was the complicated thing, because of my limited budget. The prosthetics creature team, I could only afford them for 1 day. And so he came to makeup, and we probably started rolling camera on him about midday. But obviously he, that's getting ready and prepared and all that kind of stuff. And then he's in the chair, getting all the tentacles like lined up onto the wall. So I'd say all up, including the prep and the blocking and making sure that the thing was pumping and the tentacles were moving, I'd say 6 hours in total.
Okay, that's still a lot. And you just have like one shot. Well, you have one shot and you have to cut and edit, right?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about that, and you might have noticed this, is that interior spaceship is 360.
Yeah.
So we designed it 180 because that's the only way you can really shoot. And then those little modular things inside, you can take them out and turn them around. And so we actually had a 360 set. So yeah, it's technically one shot that we cut around, but there's a lot more complexity because you have to do one side of like all of the stuff, his face, and then all the other way stuff. And then he's on fire, right? So the fire stuff at the end, spoiler warning for anyone who's seen the film or who's about to see the film after watching this. So the fire stuff is all different lighting. It's all different lenses and different color scheme. And so we shot that last. And then once we did that, we wrapped him and he could take the makeup off. So he was actually on set, like probably for like 7 hours. So you're looking at a makeup of 4 hours, it kind of adds up. So it's not like we got his one shot and then he could go. It was a pretty complicated day. We shot that whole thing on a soundstage, so it actually made it a lot more easier and more streamlined because you can control the lighting, you control the green screen, you can control. There's no weather. The sound is all good, which is why I made that decision. But yeah, it ended up being like worked out really well, but he had to he was right in as the character for nearly that whole day.
And what's your inspiration for the creation of the 2 characters in the short?
Sure. In film inspiration, you mean? Like what films inspired me?
It can be films, comics, books.
So I'm obviously Alien was a big influence. The Thing is another influence. But I think like movies like Event Horizon, where you have something that's out in space that kind of draws people in. And then it's kind of like goes weirdly cosmic horror. So I've got a feature script that I've written that I wrote before this film, which is about a house party, and an asteroid crashes into the house party that has a parasitical alien in it and starts assimilating all the party guests. And so the alien designed in that is the same alien in this. It's kind of part of the same extended universe. And a big inspiration on that was the Robert Rodriguez movie Faculty, if you've ever seen the 90s movie. So I really like the idea of the assimilation and having a comedy high school film that's similar to The Thing, but you've got all the staff who are all like acting super weird. And so I thought, what does the alien look like before they start turning into human? They're tentacle monsters. So it's like the transition of the monster before they become human. So in this little glimpse in this film is that kind of build up. So if we do the feature, we'll see them as humans and stuff like that. And I just wanted to show that character in the very beginning of the transformation. So that's why all the tentacles are still there.
Yeah, I actually like it. It is quite effective because you kind of like you use your time wisely.
Yeah.
And I now that I'm asking you the questions, you use not only the time but the budget and the execution wisely, because as the director in the directorial part, you have to make decisions, right? On how to shoot, when to shoot. If you put the makeup on the actor, and if you commit mistakes, you just have one shoot, right?
Sure, you can't redo it.
Yes. So how were the rehearsals before, like all the effects and all the things are in place?
None. Well, that's not necessarily true. So the interesting thing about the visual effects, so I had my visual effects supervisor on set. So we had an idea of that he was going to do like the wrist thing, and we had that like the plate that has the computer and stuff on it. But what it looked like, I didn't know until I got to Chiang Mai. So all of that sky replacement, the ship coming down, we kind of were shooting, and then the visual effects supervisor, Jason, was like, well, if we get this as a plate, then we can then put it in afterwards. So we didn't have an opportunity to really do the previs. And in that regards, I probably would have made a few changes. And that would have been probably the design of the capsule. I might have made changes if I knew what the rest of the world would look like the ship coming down at the end and some of the visual effects of the sky. I might have made it a little bit more futuristic.
Yeah.
I think that's my only. Before this interview, I actually watched the film again, although I've seen it like 15 times. And I was like, I think the only thing I would change, the acting's amazing, the visual effects is amazing, the editing's amazing. It's just the design of the capsule. And I think the reason for that is I designed that first. The very first thing I did before I got a crew was ring my builder, because I knew how complex the build was, and got him to design and build the pod. Now, it's awesome because you can go in it. It's interactive. We can use it on set. But I probably would have built it bigger, is maybe the main thing. I think that's the number one thing people say about the film, is that they think the capsule is smaller on the outside than it is on the inside. And fine, that's okay. Again, budget constraints, very quick. So from writing the script to releasing it in the theater, the process was 6 months exactly.
Okay, that's actually quite fast. Yes, and right now, what are you working at? What is your next project?
So right now, when we were just talking earlier, I made a film called Closed Circuit. So that film is like a monster movie. I built a werewolf puppet. And so that film is playing in film festivals at the moment. It will be playing at the Days of the Dead Film Festival in Atlanta, if anyone is going to go to that. And a bunch of other film festivals coming up. Right now, though, so I got to America and I hit the ground running, and I'm working on a new film. So it's a horror film set in the desert of Nevada. It's about a guy whose car breaks down and gets stuck in the town, and then he goes to the local bar and wins a cursed object in a card game that causes him to commit atrocities in the town, and he gets stuck in this curse. So that's the film I'm currently working on, but it's good. I kind of like being busy. I've made Outer Reaches. Exactly 1 year later, I made closed circuit, and now 1 year later again, I'll be making this film. I'm also in development of a feature film at the moment that will be using the Thai crew. We're shooting that in Thailand. I won't going to give too much information about that one at the moment, but it's going to be a feature that we're looking at shooting next year that will be shot in Thailand. So that's like an action sci-fi film. But yeah, the main thing that I'm working on, like that I'm promoting and then people getting watched is the closed circuit. I don't know if you did I send you closed circuit at all? I can't remember.
No. I watch other reaches.
I'll send you closed circuit after this.
Yes, please. Actually, talking about Thailand, why Thailand? You're the second Australian director who I interview who recorded in Thailand.
It's interesting. So I wrote this script set in San Francisco, into like San Francisco and Silicon Valley. And then I was in Thailand with my visual effects team.
Yes.
And we were talking about them coming on board as being the visual effects partners in collaborating on this feature. And he made a comment. He said, why don't you shoot it in Thailand? He's got access to stunt crew. He's got access to pyrotechnics teams, ADs, all that kind of stuff. And so I had to think about it, and I was like, okay, how do I change this script to be in a Thai setting? And I started doing research and working out that the budget could, the money goes a lot further, good production houses, good access to crew, and they have a really good incentive as well. So if you spend a certain amount of money, then they'll give you some money back on the budget. And that includes post-production, that includes shooting in cities that might not be Bangkok. And so for me, it makes the most amount of sense. And when I rewrote this script, it feels Thai. It has a Thai sort of like underbelly, kind of like the Matrix crossed with something like John Wick, where you've kind of running away from these gangsters and just giving you a little bit of a tease. And so for me, having a crew that's already there, having access to the funds, and having a script that really suits that lifestyle of Bangkok and the combination of Thai culture and like cryptocurrency transactions and gangsters that are like drinking like Red Bulls and just like working on their computer. That's kind of the vibe I'm going for this feature film.
Well, that's fantastic. And that's your future film, right?
Yeah, so the script at the moment is 95 pages.
Okay, yeah, that's good. And you already have like cast and crew?
Not yet. So I'm working on this first short that I'm shooting in Nevada in April. And then from there, I will be looking at getting the funding and talking to some cast and crew. So if anyone is a producer and wants to speak to me, hit me up on Instagram. But I'm going to South by Southwest next in March, and I've got some other festivals and stuff like that. So I'm on the right path in regards to getting interest and getting people to put money in. And then once that kind of gets put through, then I can start looking at cast and crew. But I do have some crew locked in. Obviously, I've got the Thai crew locked in. I've got a few producers, a couple of people that I've worked with on these 3 projects. So all crew that I've been sort of working with, I can get some of them back to back, and production designers, and maybe the DP that I'm working on this one will also be the DP for that one. These are all the conversations that I've been having with all these films that I've been working on. It's like, we're going to make this feature, so people are in place.
That's fantastic. And I have been noticing, like right now, there is a big tendency in regrowing on sci-fi. There is like a new reinterest in sci-fi and horror, both things. Dune is one of the most important films of last year.
Yeah, it's
going to be one of the most important films of the next year, probably. But the thing is, I want to know how is in Australia. How it's like this growing up like into sci-fi, and how do you connect to sci-fi like back in Australia?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we start with a movie like Mad Max. I think that solidified Australia's film world and what we can offer in the sense of like a post-apocalyptic world. But sci-fi is an interesting one because it isn't that popular, especially with short film, because of just the scope and the budget and restraints that you have. But horror has always been a big thing, like with movies like The Babadook, and obviously the last couple of years ago with Talk to Me. I think the thing is about it is that these films can be relatively affordable. It's lower budgets with not as much moving parts. You can go into the bush and just shoot a horror film. You can. So I think for me, growing up, horror was always a film that I would do the work on as a crew member, because people would be like, "Oh, we're going to shoot this kangaroo movie where the kangaroo is a zombie and kills people," or a movie like Crocodiles. So we've got that kind of like outback, or a movie like Wolf Creek, for example, is a great sort of Australian horror film that kind of really started that movement. Plus, in the 80s and 90s, we had so many different Australian horror films. When I was in uni, I wrote a whole essay about it. So if we ever meet up in person, we should go over all the awesome Australian horror films that there are. So for me, it's kind of was like a natural thing, like making horror and being part of those crews that would make those types of films. Movies like Razorback, or I don't know, like Boar or something like that. But the sci-fi stuff is, I wanted to do something new. I wanted to do something challenging, and I wanted to show people, especially coming to America, I was like, this is what I can do. This is kind of almost like a calling card for me. I made Outer Reaches without very much other films under my belt, apart from the film crew stuff. And so I wanted to prove to myself and to the rest of the film world that I had what it takes to make something new and exciting.
Well, I feel that it's exciting. I kind of like, it was like a really good time. I think it's like we're all really well paced. It's like the rhythm is good. The visuals are pretty good. They're pretty solid. I feel like 35,000 would like really good for a really small budget. I think it's really, really challenging. I know that being a director and working on cinema, on a film, it's a hassle because it is expensive, and the people doesn't know. But your job is not only doing the movie. Your job is going to be behind the money, because maybe you're looking for a producer, but you're the producer within the film, right?
Absolutely.
Well, you find one. So congratulations, that's an amazing job. Thanks. And I really looking for what is next. Like I want to see the rest of your work. I wanna like, we are going to close the first half of this this program, because we are going to stream it like back on Phillycam. It's but what is the message that you would like to send to all the people who want to see your work, where they can find it, and about your production company?
Sure. So you can find my work and sort of updates and behind the scenes stuff at Forgotten Astronaut Productions. So Forgotten Astronaut is on Threads, Instagram, Facebook. I'm about to create a TikTok, even though it's kind of a bit up in the air, but you can, I'm kind of sort of trying to build momentum. So you can follow me, or you can follow myself if you want to directly follow me. It's 1 page per minute. So pretty easy to find. Or shoot me an email. You can go to my website, which is forgottenastronaut.media, and check out all my stuff there. But yeah, I'm around. I'm send me an email, send me a message on Instagram if you want to know more, you want to see the film. I'm sure that the film at the moment, if you want to see Outer Reaches, if you haven't already seen it, I know I gave some spoilers away, but it's currently on YouTube on Dust. So if you just search Dust, then or just type Outer Reaches Dust, it will come up. It's doing pretty well, and yeah, you can see it there. And hopefully later in the year, once it's done the festival circuit, I'll be putting Closed Circuit up somewhere. Maybe Alta, maybe my own website. I don't know.
That's fantastic. So we continue. We just close that for the TV segment. So if you have like an open card and money to produce whatever franchise you would like to produce, which movie would you like to produce?
So if I got a manager and they were like, "Hey, we want you to direct this film. What film would you want to make?" Yeah, I want to make the new Dredd movie.
Wow, that would be really cool.
With Karl Redgen, because the original, the Dredd movie by Alex Garland, although he didn't get the directing credit, is like, so the world is so vast and there's so many different judges. And I think for me, with a combination of horror and sci-fi, I would love to play on the deaf one. I don't know if you know much about the Dredd series. because I've had this question asked before, interestingly enough, and I originally said, I would love to do an alien film, but Fede Alvarez has kind of got that under control. And I think I would also love to do an episode of, if they ever do a TV series, anthology series of the Cabin in the Woods, all the different creatures on the board. So if they could go, oh, which character would you like? I'll choose, the mermaids or something like that. As well as I'd love to do an episode. What was the TV show that I was thinking that I'd love to do an episode? Oh, 13 Ghosts. So if they ever do a 13 Ghosts series, which they were talking about and Netflix wanted to do, and they were like, let's get Karl to do an episode, I would absolutely love to do a single episode of 13 Ghosts series.
I think the three properties that you mentioned, they're pretty good. Actually, I miss a lot 13 Ghosts. I was watching Scooby-Doo like a couple of days.
Yeah, nice.
And I just love the guy who plays Shaggy. I forgot his name.
Matthew Lillard.
He played the titular guy in Scream, and he's getting back to Scream.
Yeah, they just cast him in Scream 7.
Yes. No, and honestly, I think it will be really good to get it back. I think Alien maybe also. Well, there is going to be a lot of Alien like in the following next years. There is a Predator movie next year, like Badlands.
Oh yeah, the new Predator movie. That looks sick.
Yes, but I like sci-fi, and I think sci-fi and horror are my favorite genders. Nice. Because they are like a field of experimentation, and you can be free, because if you're going to do a rom-com or you're going to do like a historic drama, there is a formula and there are rules, and sci-fi and horror doesn't have any rules. You can do whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I love about it, and I can set my own rules. I can be like, especially if you're doing sci-fi where you can design the world building, where, you've got to design, how does the ship get from Earth to here? So you're inventing space travel, you're inventing, fusion energy. And I'm a big nerd, as you could probably tell. And so I always have meetings with my production designer or my brother or whatever. And we go, so how does this work? We base it on other things we've seen, or like, how does the petrol or whatever we have, the fuel pod, how does that go into, like, so you're talking about things that you might not have any experience with, engineering, and you're talking about the digital overlays and stuff. It's like, well, why would this, so you're inventing like programs, and you're inventing, I mean, yes, some of them are built out of like cardboard and stuff, but it's still this idea where you can be so creative and inventive to the point where you can say, oh, let's invent a language, let's invent a creature, let's invent a new species that comes from this specific planet. In rom-com or comedy, you don't have that flexibility, because as soon as you put a tentacle monster into a Steve Carell comedy movie, then it becomes silly, then it becomes you can't take it seriously, unless of course it is that type of genre, like the upcoming movie Death of a Unicorn, which is kind of playing on that comedy film with those fantastical elements, which I really like too, because more movies are doing that now.
Yeah, and overall I like when they're combining genders. Like last year I enjoyed a lot of movie called I Saw the TV Glow.
Yeah,
it caught me off guard. It was like kind of like a what is this? So I like that thing, that you don't have to follow any rules. You just kind of like be creative, and you like the space topic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think space is an interesting concept. Look at my production company, look at all my logos.
Yes.
I've got tattoos all over me that have like tentacles and space stuff. So I think for me, it's always had that appeal, especially monsters. My films do really well in places like Mexico and Spain and like Colombia and Argentina, because there's this idea of expressionism and this monster thing of the unknown and creating something completely new. And I really like the idea of space and being like, well, what does the monster look like? Why does it exist? Is it a monster, or is it just an alien? Like, are we the monsters, like in something like Starship Troopers, where it's like we're the bad guys? I really like playing on that, and I would love to do that in the future. I would love to work on a big budget sci-fi film that we can expand on maybe the Outer Reaches universe. I've had a lot of people ask, it's one of the biggest questions I get asked is there going to be an Outer Reaches feature film? And absolutely, if there's a good script that I can come up with, or have a good budget that we can sort of do the 90 minutes, I would love to, take all of those lessons that I learned in the short and put them to something, amazing, something new that we can get in the cinemas, or, maybe on streaming, that people can go, oh man, this guy made a sweet alien sci-fi film. Have you seen it? And it's like, that's the goal, obviously.
Is there a way that we can see Outer Reaches within an anthology? Like, I don't know, ABC of Death or something like that?
It's so funny you say that, because after this conversation, I'll send you Closed Circuit. It's in the same story universe. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, I would love to have Outer Reaches as part of a bigger anthology. Let's say someone contacted me and say, hey, we're doing this anthology of these short films in this kind of genre or whatever. Absolutely, I'll say yes. But I'm also kind of just building my own anthology. And so Closed Circuit is set in the Vast Horizons Corporation that sort of sent the ship to this planet. It's when they're a startup, and when they started in like this year, and we have the same company, and we have the same, like, the CEO, we have the backstory of the CEO and how he started this company and then did space travel. So I think what I have this funny idea is to put everything in the same story universe and build my own anthology.
That works. It's like Damien's Leone, like originally Terrifier is part of All Hallows Eve.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't seen All Hallows Eve, but I've seen all the other Terrifier films.
Yeah, that works, actually. that works pretty well. And something out of sci-fi, if you pick any topic outside of sci-fi or terror, what will you do?
It's so funny, because every time I try and write a script, let's say I write something that's not in those two genres, it always kind of falls back to, say, fantasy, or I think if I was to make a film not in horror or sci-fi, I mean, I probably would want to make like a indie drama kind of thing, similar to like 500 Days of Summer, or something like I Heart Huckabees or Garden State. So like a fun indie drama, coming of age kind of thing, where you have an indie soundtrack from like bands like the Lumineers and stuff, and go on a road trip, and that kind of like indie free spirited thing that ends up winning things like Sundance or going into get a nomination for best original screenplay. That's the kind of film I would want to make. I love America. I mean, I'm not from America, but I love that kind of Americana style. I love watching movies like American Honey, or the Shia LaBeouf movie, or Florida Project, where you have these characters kind of living in sort of places, and then they kind of worlds come alive with bold colors, using high contrast, and people like Greta Gerwig did it earlier before she did Barbie, and Noah Baumbach and stuff like that. So those are the kinds of people that I would love to make a movie like that.
And let's say you have $3 million right now. What will you do with $3 million?
I would make my Thailand movie.
Your Thailand movie.
Yeah, so if someone gave me $3 million right now, that's literally what I'm jumping on. I'm making a gangster movie with cyber criminals and sci-fi, and that's I mean, I'm already in the pre-production for that, so that would be literally what I'd make with it.
And how we can as public, how we can support you?
I think at the moment the best is just kind of following along on Instagram. Later in the year, I'm going to maybe launch my own YouTube, maybe make a Patreon. So at the moment, my social media manager and I are kind of building an audience. And so we're getting people watching Outer Reaches, getting people seeing Closed Circuit, really showing my name as an upcoming filmmaker. I haven't done anything super big at the moment, but really the best way to support me is chucking a follow, watching the films, commenting. If you see me at a film festival, come say hi. Or if you want to work with me on a different capacity, if you're an actor or a stunt person or whatever, shoot me a message, shoot me an email. I'm always love to talk to people. And things like this help, obviously. Things like this people, people probably don't know who I am really, and then seeing Outer Reaches or seeing another film and going, oh, that's that guy that I saw on that interview that time with Eric, and then they'll be like, so it's kind of this putting the seeds in place to kind of eventually grow.
Yeah, being honest, I feel humbled to have you here. Honestly, it is a great job. Actually, it's amazing. Directors are the coolest of the people that I can interview. That's a thing.
Thanks.
That's certainly a thing, because you're open, you're creative, and you're open to put the work together. And sometimes, like, you're not the face of the work, right? The face is usually like the actor and the effects. But I love the work that directors do, and I know that there is much more work, and the people doesn't have an idea that is like a scouting and going around. So I really appreciate and humbling that to have you here. I'm really like amazed that during this year you're my second Australian colleague. I got the opportunity to interview James Crook, director of Latency, that actually was also filmed in Bangkok.
What's his last name?
James Crook.
Crook.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to see if I've worked not with him directly, but James Crook, Australian filmmaker. That's kind of cool that you met another Australian filmmaker who, made a film in Thailand and stuff. I might reach out to him and see.
Yes.
Do you remember what's the name of the film that he shot?
Latency.
How do you spell that? Latency.
Latency.
Cool.
Latency.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know it. I haven't seen it, but I'm going to reach out to him. That's cool.
It's interesting, and I like, as I mentioned, I love creativity. Overall, I can see like I can enjoy a rom-com, but if you saw a rom-com, you have seen most of them.
Yeah, you mean it's formulaic, like it's always the same.
Yes, and if your short is different than most of the things that are there, maybe you find inspirations. It's like, I don't know. I saw The Substance. I know all the references that they're there, but the substance is the substance.
It's so good.
It's really cool, man. It's really enjoyable to like just like disconnect from reality for a second.
Yeah, and I think that's the same for me. If you watch something like Outer Reaches, you're going to see the influences from Alien. You're going to see the influences from The Thing. Even this is again for the audience who haven't seen the film, there's a fun Terminator reference that you might have got, and the James Cameron stuff and John Carpenter and Cronenberg and stuff like that. You can see those influences on this film, and even in my new film. But we're filmmakers. We get inspired from other projects. We're not, Quentin Tarantino once said that he's never ripping anyone off. He's inspired. It's motivates him, or it's what we call a remix, right? You get that inspiration. Quentin Tarantino is the master of using references that people don't realize. And then they become very specifically his genre films, to the point where people now make Quentin Tarantino style movies, and it becomes a genre of its own. And I think The Substance is one of those films where you can see all the inspirations, especially on things when they share them on Instagram and stuff, or TikTok, where you say, oh, but she ripped off all these shots, but it's not true. It's inspired. It's, you're taking, you taking those ideas and you sort of spinning them to make your own story.
Yeah, and that's something that I have been loving. And actually, by loving the whole kind of like the whole horror industry, it's good, because you know where it comes from, but you also distinguish the difference and the essence of the movie, the final product. So that's something that I really enjoy. It's like there is movies of George R. Romero, but there is like a lot of like success, there is a lot of derivation of George R. Romero work on zombies. And you're going to see it like until the end of the zombie franchise, because it's a product of George R. Romero. You cannot it's almost impossible to do a zombie movie without taking things from George R. Romero. Same for body horror. You thinking, remember, it's example to give like the book. It's kind of like a textbook of body horror.
Absolutely.
So you just take any Cronenberg and like Tentacles 101. So it's fine. how to use that knowledge and to apply it, and how to make your own product. It's what's to make a filmmaker.
And I think it really helps when you're working with the crew, because as you're someone who interviews a lot of people all the time, this isn't a one-man show. We require a whole team of people to make these films and for our visions to come to life. And so if you have that inspiration, like I was saying with Monsters, then you can give that to other crew members, like the DP or your production designer, and say, I want the visual style to look like this. I want, you were saying that designing tentacles, right? I can watch a movie like Existence or something else that has kind of grotesque tentacle work, and then you can show it to the special effects team, and the creature team, and be like, well, see how it slithers like this, or how it kind of has that, it's gooey, or it's got like slime on it. You can use those as sort of influences and references. I actually wish I saw the substance before I made Outer Reaches. Obviously, it came out afterwards, because then I would have got some more ideas on like the ways that at the end when the monster's kind of falling apart, and kind of using that as inspiration. But that's okay. I like when I make a film and then I'll watch another movie in the cinema. I'm like, oh man, that's such a good idea. Why didn't I do that one?
No, and it's totally okay. And that's the most important thing. Like the people is like, yeah, I have seen that. Yeah, try to execute it. It is really hard.
Absolutely, and that's good. And then, like you were saying, there's new horror movies coming out all the time. I think it's the biggest genre that is always evolving and always doing something new. Like I saw the TV Glow is a good example of that. And having the substance be nominated for like all these Academy Awards means that new filmmakers and people like myself are going to be like, okay, now it's possible to have a film like Outer Reaches be mainstream, to have that appeal. A few years ago, it'd be crazy to think that a body horror film where a woman turns into a hideous beast that then explodes and covers everyone into blood would be nominated for Best Picture and Best Director. Like everyone would go, like, no way it would even be considered. There's a long way to go with the Academy Awards. It's still biased, obviously, and there's still some work to do for making, horror and sci-fi be more appreciated, but we're on the right track. We're heading in the right direction.
I will celebrate if the substance like win like the Oscar.
Don't worry, it's going to Amelia Perez.
That's the whole topic.
We can have a whole conversation about that another time.
Yeah,
I just wanted to throw that as a joke.
We can do 3 podcasts about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. You took a sensitive point, but that's good. Karl, I really appreciate to have you today. I would love to see the rest of your work.
Sure.
Please, audience, please follow Karl in the social media and have the chance to watch Outer Reaches. It's on YouTube. It's for free. Watch it, share it. I think it's really important and help Karl to reach more people.
Absolutely, yeah. And as I said, follow me on all my social media platforms. Hit me up. Let's have a chat. Send me a message. Say, I want to watch your monster movie. I'll send it over, and we can sort of make some magic together.
For sure, we will. So we will cut and see you on next Friday, Sunday around. Nice to have you here, Karl.
Thanks so much for having me. See you later.
Bye-bye.